Anime these past few years has a bit of a problem. Now, I don't mean in the "oh, modern anime bad" kind of way, though there are plenty of discussions to be had about the current state of the industry and the average production values of seasonals nowadays. I mean in how it tackles the concepts of the Metaverse, NFTs, and AI art. Anime doesn't deal with any of these often, but I noticed that whenever it does, it's been tepid at best, and downright embracing of these shifty ideas at worst, these past 4 years or so. And I don't see any of this changing anytime soon. I know Clear and Sweet has already made 2 videos on these subjects, but I want to talk about the anime peddling them more so than the concepts behind them. So, here I am. That and, well, if the title hasn't already informed you of my stances of what we're about to be discussing, the possibilities, the futures brought up, they repulse me. Let's set the stage for the uninitiated or those who may have forgotten, as some of these ideas have lost much of their relevance now compared to others. NFTs were the biggest, hottest form of cryptocurrency back during the middle of the Rona pandemic. If cryptocurrency is digital real-world currency running on the blockchain, NFTs are buyable and sellable tokens running on it. Non-fungible tokens that consume an obscene amount of energy with every NFT mined, even in less resource-intensive versions. The NFT market was at its peak in 2021 to very early 2022, and has been more or less dead for at least a year now, thanks in large part to the follies of the big names in that space like Sam Bankman-Fried, and the absurd levels of fraud going on throughout the market, even if you don't inherently consider NFTs a scam. Remember the tone-deaf NFTs meant to quote-unquote honor the recently deceased like George Floyd? Remember that Bored Ape cartoon? No? Good. Shit was gross. Next we have the Metaverse. The Metaverse is basically a version of virtual reality, or VR, which is interwoven with crypto and, by extension, NFTs. It's driven by those types with the idea of a grander, shared community version of virtual reality, which basically represents a full-on virtual world. A new layer of reality separate from the physical one, and I'll touch base on this distinction in anime later. Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook, tried to push this hard with his Metaverse VR headsets to the point of changing Facebook's name to Meta. This never really took off quite like he wanted, and it was a disastrous move for the company. And the biggest space in the Metaverse, Decentraland, was an abject failure. These are all oversimplifications of now dead or at least relatively dead tech bro markets, of course. Go to Folding Ideas if you want a full breakdown on these concepts and the ridiculous journeys and failures they went through. AI art, or I guess generative AI in general, is the current tech bro fad which seems to be about decentralizing markets. This time, instead of trying to disrupt the market of currency, it's trying to absolutely derail art. At least in theory, it's about providing simple prompt tools for people to make their own music and art and whatnot. In practice, it leeches off established artists, musicians, and voices to create cobbled-together amalgamations of stolen artwork and likenesses without so much as credit to the creators, by people who don't want to put in the time to actually learn how to create art or express themselves physically or digitally. It's largely used by people resentful towards those who have actually learned how to make and profit off art, because these people feel entitled to this pie too, and are more than willing to drive as many people out of the market as possible. My resentment and or hesitation towards all of this also extends to stuff like AI song covers, AI VTubers, AI meme videos like the ones with all those US presidents, and even AI reference art. Not to mention, as the technology keeps growing, the effects become more disastrous. On the side of AI artwork, it seemed to make works easier to trick people into believing this shit wasn't AI, thanks to shedding some of the dead giveaways, but it's also led to these pieces growing in an Ouroboros, pillaging from each other more and more over time. In terms of AI music, AI videos, and deepfakes in general, music labels have begun cracking down on these hard, and other industries have started setting legal regulations like with the NFT market. Regardless, the threat AI art and deepfakes pose for art, music, voice acting markets, and other things has actively been expressed by many, and the potential for rampant disinformation in media, identity theft, and the fabrications of videos and evidence to frame people and ruin lives makes all of this fucking dystopian. It's basically a Black Mirror episode waiting to happen if unchecked. Actually, no. Some episodes of Season 3 and what came afterwards would probably result in modern Black Mirror making a pretentious, idiotic piece of shit with the idea. Wait, what? Generative AI is a gateway to some of the most absurd oversaturation the world could ever imagine in all creative fields, potentially rendering all processes and artists themselves largely or entirely obsolete, so we can no longer make a living expressing ourselves, instead making a living of either telling AI what to do or flooding more manual labor seams. It's the polar opposite of what classic futurists had envisioned, as our ability to express ourselves will be fighting an uphill battle. Regardless, this is what we're dealing with, and it's more than a little concerning that at least a few anime have toyed with these concepts in such an uncritical manner. Let's start with the Metaverse, and the anime that led me down the path of making this video, shall we? We're gonna have to set some distinctions real quick. I'm only gonna be looking at anime that specifically peddle the Metaverse itself as a concept, rather than VR or game anime that technically have virtual realities that can be described as a Metaverse by people pushing that concept. As such, we're not going to be discussing any game isekai or whatnot, nothing like Bofuri, and no, not even Sword Art Online, at least until it makes a Metaverse anime. I can see it now! Here you go, Kawahara-sensei and the producers of A1 Pictures or Aniplex. Here's your idea. Please reach out to me if you use it. I like money. Gundam Build Metaverse is the 10th anniversary installment of the Gundam Build timeline. The one timeline of Gundam that is more unashamedly a toy commercial than the rest. Which says a lot, to be honest. The Build timeline has always had a positive view on technology and its ability to bring people together through gunpla. First, there was the Blazblue particles that allowed people to remote control their gunpla in actual combat and build fighters try. Then we got VR in Divers and Divers Re-Rise, which also led to the L-Divers, which are essentially sentient AI born from the feelings derived from what goes on inside Gundam's VR game. Gundam Battle Nexus Online, or GBN for short. That one actually had some questions about whether this kind of life counts and should be preserved, or it's the result of wonky game coding shit gone astray and should be purged back in Divers. And now in Re-Rise, they even get access to little gunpla bodies so they can interact with the real world too, which leads to them having their own conclusions about the virtual and real world. If anything, the Metaverse might seem like the next logical step, even if I'd actively consider it a step too far. After all, this is where people are meant to use actual currency to purchase things in and out of game, which is usually going to involve access to your bank account information and your crypto wallet so you can do those transactions. There's where you get those dreaded NFTs. Of course, in GBM it's presented less like the utter failure that was Decentraland, and more like GBN 2.0. With all your favorite characters from the previous build shows all having a good time, battling it out alongside new characters as they all celebrate the wonders of the Metaverse. It feels extremely slimy and insidious. And of course, since this Metaverse is all squeaky clean and totally fine and dandy, right guys? You can buy your gunpla in real life here, customize your avatar to be even more technical than before, and we have an AI welcoming person and guide. We have none of that Decentraland type nonsense. Again, it's GBN, but better, with even more focus on social interactivity somehow. Even though we don't have anything new to show you on that front, and people were already able to do YouTube things through GBN. That's basically the full extent of what the anime shows us to promote this idea. It's disturbing that it does so to begin with, but it almost elicits a better chortle with how little is actually done to make this the next big leap, as the anime touts features that have mostly already been in the timeline since Build Divers. It's basically just a flimsy excuse to smack previous Build MCs together like action figures, and come up with a flimsy new plot for 3 new characters. Anime which cover VR like Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise, Sword Art Online, and even episode 4 of Rin Daughters of Nemosine have already shown some dangers of VR where people can find themselves trapped, both figuratively and literally. In Nemosine, people are lying malnourished in the streets, fully retreating into the virtual world without a care in the world for their physical vessels. A crypto version of that would make for some extra pulpy sci-fi action mystery or something. But of course, that's not quite right for Gundam Build entries. The reception to this terribly rushed anime with a nothing plot and wooden new characters hasn't exactly been positive either. Frankly, it should have made the crossover between previous build entries' protagonist the focal point, instead of a sideshow for a cobbled together nothing burger plot with an abysmal antagonist who speaks primarily in villain line cliches. The visuals are also pretty weak until episode 3. But hey, I guess they can still sell some cool gunplot kits while they try to continue peddling their ill-advised Metaverse. Oh, also a bunch of Metaverse CAD files were leaked, and as such they had to freeze downloads for 2 days in their 2-week limited time opening. Yeah, between this and how the anime doesn't seem to have gotten much traction or positive reception, safe to say this play hasn't exactly been too kind to Bandai Namco. Speaking of things that came way too late and aren't exactly panning out, Kizuna no Allele. Much like Build Metaverse, Kizuna no Allele was a 2023 anime that ended up touching on something that was already on its way out during production, let alone when it aired. In a post-credit scene of episode 3, the main VTuber girl, Miracle, is being lectured by this weird floating cat thing named Vanity about NFTs because it asked a quiz question about the Lapin d'Or prize, famous for its reputation as an NFT, and she doesn't know what that shit is. By the end, she's clapping all excited and whatnot about this whole thing. Also, shit, I gotta explain what the Lapin d'Or prize is, don't I? I just watched this bell on its own. I'll be right back. Fuck's sake, why do I keep doing this shit? Okay, so Kizuna Ai was a VTuber created in late 2016 by Activate, and was often cited as the pioneer of the concept, even if what her company was doing with her would ultimately be a bit different from what a lot of both independent and corporate VTubers do nowadays. Portrayed by Nozomi Kazuga, the character of Kizuna Ai is an AI hoping to bridge AI and virtual reality, and over half a decade later, an anime would begin production and eventually find itself airing in summer of 2023. That anime was Kizuna no Allele, and it isn't even about her. Instead, 5 years after her disappearance, a bunch of anime original aspiring VTubers like Miracle become the focus as they attend VTuber classes and aim for the Lapin d'Or. The Lapin d'Or is a prize handed out by the Virtual Grid Awards for VTubers capturing people's hearts, and according to episode 3's post-credits scene, it's also an NFT. One can only complete the VGAs by winning the Aiden Seed, hosted at Aiden Academy, the virtual idol school the cast is a part of. Also, the anime does brush up towards the idea of AI music thanks to the concept of Kizuna Ai, but that's not quite the same as the generative AI we're dealing with nowadays, aside from episode 3 having everyone compete by singing a song that was generated and composed by AI based on previous VGA winners and the skill level of Aiden Academy. Same thing goes for stuff like Miracle's Alarm and the daily schedule management AI, Vanity. Really, most girls are seemingly ordinary anime characters who engage in virtual reality as far as I can tell. Much like Gundam Build Metaverse, the reception hasn't exactly been warm to this anime. Alas, we're in the second season right now, as this was actually a split-core production. I can see why it wasn't looked too fondly upon, even by VTuber fans. This shit is boring. It's a dull, upstart virtual idol anime with dry characters, whatever visuals, and music that's just there, outside of some nice insert songs. Outside of the ire it got when peddling NFTs in a post-credits scene, the show pretty much came and went with barely any glances given towards it. Also, careful while you watch this if you decide to bother with it, because in some places, the songs themselves in this show have heinous compression issues. Seriously, shit sounds like it was uploaded in 2007. Can't really bring it up as a slight against the anime itself, but I thought I'd let you know. I certainly don't feel like watching more than what I already looked at for this video. It's a total nothing burger with maybe 1 or 2 moments per episode that get any kind of reaction out of me apart from liking the covers of Yosuka the girls do. Things just kinda happen in the show and nothing about any character or the presentation of the show does anything for me. It does get slightly more interesting with episode 3 when Noelle, one of the other aspiring VTuber idols, lambasts Miracle for trying to ask the principal what the trick is to performing the song they're set to compete with in the Aiden Seed because trying to take shortcuts is lazy and indicative of a lack of desire to properly express oneself. However, the character arc Miracle goes through this episode feels so quick and sloppy, just as everything else does in the episodes I gave it before dropping. It's going through the motions, perfunctory at best. Honestly, it's ironic. I didn't feel like watching the remaining episodes as the show didn't seem interested in actually exploring much of any of what it brought up or tried to instill in SMC. Again, it's a giant nothing burger, a show with little pathos. I say little instead of none. partially because I did skip around till after this, and episode 5 did have Noel present something to Miracle about embracing ideas and feelings in your music. Still, I don't think I'm missing much by moving on. Even if it does get better later, it probably won't be more than just okay. And between the snore-inducing first impression and the blatantly shoehorned in NFT explanation that feels as obvious as can be, yeah, no, I'm good. NFTs and metaverses aren't exactly in the public consciousness quite like they were even a year ago. For now, the conversation is squarely on generative AI. On that note, let's return to an old punching bag of mine, Carole Tuesday. I don't want to step on past me's toes too much, but let's revisit how the show handles the subject of AI. Carole Tuesday is set in Mars, where humans have colonized it, turned it into Space America, and replaced man-made music with AI-generated drivel. A rising singer-songwriter duo tries to rise to the ranks with their quirky manager and the friends they make along the way. As another young upstarts try to make it big in a world full of naysayers type plot, as well as a man has something tech can't replicate story. It's a little difficult to believe that they can become relatively popular as literally the only fully man-made act on the planet now that AI has become so advanced that it could create music that sounds exactly as if it were done by the artists themselves. And that's where the issues begin. The show hardly does a damn thing with this idea. Sure, AI has coveted basically every music genre on Mars, and it's expected that at the very least, the production should be AI generated. However, the only time the societal and industrial expectation is actively addressed in the first half of the show is when Erdogan blows off our main duo on the sole basis that they were gonna just play their instruments and sing. At no point during any gig or tournament our main duo signs up for are they met with backlash for not using AI. Hell, the only time they were ever rejected was because they had to temporarily fill for a rock band because the frontman was zonked out of his mind. That's not an AI expectation, that's a fucking genre issue, and what a lot of musicians face when they open for someone. Just look at anyone who opens for Deathclock. Every other time, fans just eat this shit up like with anything else. And even the judges on the Mars Brightest contest, including Erdogan from before, just accept it like anything else. Nobody rejects it for not having a hint of AI. Nobody's skeptical. Hell, nobody seems to have missed man-made and man-performed tunes. And nobody seems to go, oh, so this is what non-AI music is like. Nice, I forgot about that. Flash, I never heard of that before. There's no exploration to back up the fact that AI music has become normal or expected. At best, one of the people our main duo works with halfway through the show sticks to physical band playing and recording as he's an old head producer from a bygone era. The only other time AI music as an issue comes up is when the main rival of the show, Angela, walks into her manager generating music using her voice behind her back. And she's understandably upset about both that and being told that she's more or less obsolete. She was put through the ringer for this shit, and now she's being asked to take a step back and let AI take the wheel? That's fucked. But we don't actually come back to this at all. There's no exploration of this idea. It just comes up to make a character sad, and then it disappears because we have to pivot to talking about immigration politics in the back half of the show. Plus, everyone's still performing live anyway, so even if the production is AI, this idea Angela is having thrust upon her seems to be a brand new development for the world as it is for the viewer. The show is just not consistent about this whole ordeal. Why is AI presented as a universal, dogmatic standard our main characters are challenging if everyone performs live anyway, including bands using their own instruments with, again, no pushback whatsoever like what Erdogan did with Tuesday in episode 4. It's all just sloppy. Oh, and at one point the main antagonist, a politician named Jerry, talks about his research on the human brain and how through stuff like music and politics, AI can manipulate people's emotions. Not much is really elaborated about that though, it's more of a backdrop and excuse for these plots and ideas, rather than something the show wishes to explore itself. That being said, frankly, better shows have used political or technological backdrops for crowd-pleasing plotlines while actually exploring them and backing up interesting or salient points. And if you want to see how this show fared in terms of that immigration plotline and other political avenues, check out my video on the show and why it sucks. As a Latin American immigrant, Let's just say that I was a little more annoyed than I'd already be with how the show handled this shit. That's kind of my main problem with the show. It brings up like 1 or 2 points and never does anything of value with it. Nothing's done with the current trends and expectations of music, or how greedy corporations exploit and use up artists before throwing them away for AI and other purposes. In the end, AI-generated music is more or less treated like any other kind of music, whether it be made with singing and instruments, digital productions and plugins, or both. Frankly, it's just fence-sitting at the end of the day. That's all the show is. It doesn't have a stance beyond AI music exists, and sometimes people can be jerks about it, but we can still have man-made music too, maybe. It boggles my mind how people point to this show as a shining champion of the purity of art and going against AI, when the show is straight up just fence-sitting while saying 1 or 2 broadly agreeable things and people eat it up. It's like BoJack Horseman that one time he was pressured into giving a stance on the Israel and Palestine conflict. It's vaguely agreeable hot air people swear is actually profound. Yeah, it was 2019 and the AI media debate didn't really kick off until 2022, but still. Carole Tuesday is a frustratingly shallow and ill-considered show. You could see it everywhere, including in its setting. On that note, hey, remember when Netflix made an anime music video and used AI-generated backgrounds? No? Well, that whole thing quickly came and went, but people dogged on Netflix and the animation studio WIT when they found out. That studio actually did the bulk of animation behind both seasons of Kizuna no Allele as well. Oh, remember when Shonen Jump Plus editors co-developed an AI tool for name generation and dialogue shortening in manga? No? Well, that's a thing. Hey, remember when some people tried making Serial Experiments Lane NFTs, and then later for the 25th anniversary of the series, tried making a Lane AI chatbot? No? Creeped out yet? I am too! Remember when Tezuka Production announced that it was going to use ChatGPT-4 for a new chapter for the late, long since deceased Osamu Tezuka's manga Blackjack? Apparently it was still drawn, but the AI was of course used for aspects of the writing process. Oh, and I can keep going, by the way. It does not stop here. I know we've technically had waifu chatbox even on Discord since 2017, but now we have AI waifus people are trying to marry, AI search engine results and misinformation, and AI image generators and AI VTubers, which are trained off the internet, resulting in some pretty racist quirks that have to be or have been dealt with. We also have AI propaganda courtesy of Israel. At a certain point, discussions of the evolution of AI become discussions of transhumanism and robotics. All that Ghost in the Shell and Valhalla type shit, or even Gene of AI would shared earlier in 2023. That's not what this video is about though. Still, that is essentially the next step of this whole process. We have Neurosama now, but who's to say that in 10, 15 plus years we won't get robots approaching some level of sentience, and sentient artificial programs without physical bodies. Some of them could potentially try to delve into the arts, into creation. I know many want to keep throwing words at an AI to tell them to generate content they can consume or go, "Looky, I made this, I'm an artist!" I know people want to use AI to fulfill their social or romantic needs, but for the purposes of my discussion, it's AI as active creatives that seem to be the most interesting potential path we can see, assuming they bind themselves to the laws and regulations that have thankfully been occurring across several industries as of 2023. Naturally, the laws will require updates, but honestly, even this can seem rather scary. Maybe eventually a healthy participation in this kind of creation and the competitions therein can be had, but when the goals of many behind AI-generated content, behind certain crypto markets and whatnot, is the displacement of people from the systems that sustain them or allow them to express themselves just so these people can turn a profit or do shit quick, I don't know. It all sounds glib. Will said AI create the same way humans would, or would they themselves just immediately generate something out? I'm not sure I want to take this discussion to that stage, and I wonder how long it'll be until that kind of discourse becomes more imminent and popular. At least with the Metaverse, the core, pure concepts behind what the Metaverse is as a crypto-laden spin-off of aren't this. VR chat is probably one of the healthiest settings that some may consider a Metaverse. It's a digital space where people can be social with one another in a way fundamentally different from social media. Despite how, like with social media, anonymity is something individual users have some agency over. We have channels dedicated to interviewing people, letting them tell their stories that they'd never get out otherwise, or would maybe only tell the people closest to them otherwise. People have made legitimate friendships on the internet for decades now too. However, outside of a few cases, none of this is a replacement for reality. It's merely a supplement that can help them forge connections and do things they have a much harder time doing in the physical world. That's one of the main appeals of VTubing right now, where people can escape to their own character versions of themselves while still being able to entertain people and genuinely socialize with other creators. This applies to both regular VTubers and PNG tubers, indie or corporate. Hell, YouTube itself is a facilitator of this, just as it has with so many other opportunities for online communities and spaces. We never needed the Metaverse for this. We never needed NFTs to be an alternate supplement to current markets. Cryptocurrency already is that, for better or worse. We don't need generative AI to create our own stories or art or music or whatever, especially with all the dangers of misinformation, identity theft, and so much more that comes with that. It's a shortcut, and a dangerous one at that, and frankly, I'd like to see anime actually examine these ideas, these corrupted spin-offs of virtual reality and AI, and do so in a critical light. Maybe not NFTs for now, that shit's dead. And the Metaverse by extension isn't doing much better and might not warrant this much either anymore. Generative AI though, oh that really needs it. Maybe Goro Taniguchi can create a work on that in the near future, assuming he isn't already doing so as a pure science fiction person. I know that in an interview with Full Frontal Moe, he said that Japanese otaku don't really vibe with pure or hard sci-fi quite like the West does, and that even in many sci-fi shows since the 90s, the sci in sci-fi isn't really at the core. Still, maybe he or someone else in his field are looking at all this and might have something to say about it in a future work. That, or maybe I just wanted to bring up Full Frontal Moe because more people should read their interviews, and I don't really know how to end this video on a note that isn't horribly glib. Though, there actually is some hope here in terms of not just legislative AI regulation in major industries, but for how AI image and art generation services like Midjourney and art stations that integrate them like DeviantArt are being asked to handle sourcing and crediting. As of October of 2023, when this video is being written, a new art tool has sprung up according to the MIT Technology Review. Nightshade adds invisible changes to pixels so that if picked up by an AI training set meant to generate AI art and AI images, it can make that system's output go absolutely haywire. This is done by the same people who developed a glaze tool for similar purposes several months prior. As such, AI companies and companies embracing AI generation will have their AIs at risk when taking artwork without the knowledge, consent, or crediting of the original artists or creators, and will theoretically have to more openly reach out to them individually to try to get around this. These companies are already facing lawsuits over this shit anyway, and while I'm sure some people will try to be malicious and duplicitous about this tool, I'd consider this whole thing to be a net positive in combating the way AI art generation is currently being done at the expense of artists. As AI continues to evolve, so will the conflicts between artists and tech bros, as well as artists and corporations. As long as we're loud and powerful enough, hopefully things will go in a better direction than, say, what YouTube is doing right now, where it's developing a tool to let users make videos using the voices of famous musicians, i.e. deepfakes. Less of this, less of shit like using dead actors for AI bullshit like what DCEU's The Flash did for Christopher Reeve. I know this AI tool will be asking the musicians for permission, but again, deepfake shit like this, I can see this going all sorts of sideways far more so than with AI image generation. Let's see where this whole thing goes, and hope for the least amount of damage done to people's lives possible. You know, I've been talking about this with some visual novel fans, some X-fan subbers, and other people I know who are either pro or anti-localizer, after the whole announcement of Mahoutsukai no Yome's AI localization that's meant to come out simultaneously with the actual chapter release. And honestly, seeing the reactions to that, on top of everything else that's been boiling up since, like, 2016, with the Jamie Marquis dub dialogue fiascos in Prison School and Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, I'm gonna make a bleak prediction that 2024 will see this whole localizer and anti-localizer issue just explode to new heights with the whole AI issue running around now. And it's all just gonna evolve into the anime and manga equivalent to Gamergate. There's some serious runoff from that debacle too, and well, we're already seeing how things are playing out now. No matter how much nuance you have, in the front lines of this essentially culture war, you're either going to be treated as some SJW cuckoid that needs to be deleted and put out of whatever job you're in if you're actually a localizer, or just some right-wing freak. It doesn't matter what your position is. It doesn't matter if you're an ecchi fan who's just tired of seeing a bunch of ecchi shows get deliberately whacked out translation. It doesn't matter what your actual stance is on translation. It's just gonna be some culture war bullshit. It's all been hijacked anyway. AI's just gonna keep marching on until something actually happens. We'll all just be wasting our time with this unproductive culture war dog shit. I really hope I'm wrong, but honestly, I think I'm seeing some writing on the wall. Now let's see, what do we call this anyway? Localizer gate or something?
Stop right there, dirtbag! An AI told me that in 4 years and 20 days you'll assassinate the president, criminal!
Sergeant Lone Noose? What the hell are you talking about? Is AI Minority reporting me right now? I was literally just doom posting about fucking anime manga discourse. What are you—
Bullshit!